What's good, you incredible sci-fi fantasy nerds? Welcome back to the Half-Blood YouTuber channel, where today I want to talk with y'all about a game that some of you watching this video are not in the least bit surprised I'm making a video about. Baldur's Gate 3. It's safe to say this is easily my second favorite game of all time. RDR2, the utterly heart-wrenching tale of Arthur Morgan that is the first video game to make me cry, still takes the top spot. I have finally finished my first full playthrough. My god, that was a lot, and I have a ton of thoughts about this phenomenal experience of a game. As you may have noticed from the title of this video, I have divided some of these thoughts into what I consider to be the three greatest aspects of Baldur's Gate 3. The masterfully done atmosphere, the plethora of impactful decisions, and the fantastic combat system. I will also note that although I absolutely consider the characters one of the three greatest aspects of this game, I have decided to include them up front as an honorable mention because I cannot properly discuss them in a spoiler-free manner. As always, I will remain as spoiler-free as I possibly can while also properly illustrating my points. Without further ado, it is time to be extraordinary. For me, atmosphere is one of, if not the most important aspects of a video game. Because of this, I think I should try my best to properly define what I think of as atmosphere. In my mind, atmosphere is one of two experiences present in media. It is the combination of audio and visual elements to create a code of immersion around the other experience, the story. The job of atmosphere is to give the story purpose and impact, to make it worth the time and energy spent to experience it. A perfect example to illustrate my point is the aforementioned Red Dead Redemption 2. RDR2 is the first game that's ever made me cry because the ending didn't just feel like the end of an isolated story, but the end of an era. Rockstar Games, the developer, does a fantastic job of letting you know, through the world and the people in it, that Arthur Morgan and his companions don't exactly belong anymore. Ultimately, you can't help but fall in love with the main cast of surprisingly kinda decent-ish outlaws who chose a bad path in life, even as the world slowly crumbles around them and you realize that there's nowhere left to run. Similarly, BG3 does a fantastic job with establishing a world where, I promise you, if the player drops a pebble in the water, they're gonna feel those ripples sooner or later, so to speak. But we'll discuss all that later on. For now, let's stay on topic. One of the easiest bits of atmosphere to appreciate in BG3, in my opinion, is how incredibly easy it is to become immersed in all the different areas BG3 has to offer. Less populated places were rightly so, and even they at least had NPCs going around and doing their own things that matched the context of the area. On the other hand, Baldur's Gate itself is littered with people who can be found having conversations, selling goods, visiting cemeteries, performing street shows, and other normal big city behaviors. Also, gloomy areas like the Underdark and the Shadow-Cursed lands just look depressing, with plenty of black accented with deep purples, fiery oranges, and acid greens, while also coming off as daunting with the amount of hostile activity. It's just incredibly impressive how well Larian Studios has been able to accurately simulate such a vast array of environments. In terms of audio, mostly the music, friggin' gorgeous. The music hits literally as soon as the main menu and doesn't really hit the brakes ever. The soundtrack works fabulously to help establish feelings of awe, dread, grandiose, intimacy, wonder, fear, and the liveliness of a big city. There were multiple times when the first thing I noticed about an area or event was the impact of the music in making me feel stress or regret, or the elation of winning a hard-fought battle, or even the comforting relief of getting to wind down at camp before taking a well-earned long rest and ending a play session. Oh, and speaking of camp, you all already know that's what we gotta talk about next. The player's camp in BG3 is meant to replicate the exercise of setting up camp and preparing for a long rest in D&D. During this time, player characters can brew potions, prepare spells, enchant weapons, talk to each other, and more. Baldur's Gate 3 does a fantastic job replicating this experience with fun little animations to occupy pre-built playable characters at their setups, engaging dialogue choices to speak with said characters and learn more about their backstories, and even dialogue for NPCs you may choose to invite to your camp. All these things, along with the ability to romance characters and have flings with others, makes for a truly immersive and engaging experience, despite one major flaw. That major flaw, which I notice every time I take a long rest in BG3, is the absence of a night watch. Now let's discuss the last topic for this section of the video, Amelia Tyler. For those of you who don't know, Amelia Tyler is the voice of the narrator, just about the closest thing BG3 gets to having a dungeon master, I think. Perhaps a DM's most important task in running a D&D campaign is properly establishing and maintaining atmosphere, immersing his or her party in the world and story and encouraging them to bring their A-game when role-playing. To much less of an extent, this is also Amelia Tyler's job, and she does a bang-up one at that. Her smooth, gentle, rhythmic, British accented voice nicely complements the Tolkien-era fantasticality of the Forgotten Realms, which was created by Ed Greenwood in the late 1960s and is the setting for BG3. Actually, to avoid any confusion, BG3 mainly takes place on the Sword Coast and the surrounding woodland region of West Faerun. Specifically, I found her descriptive reading and use of inflections incredibly immersive. Alright, we're done focusing on atmosphere, let's get to our next topic, decisions. Decisions are the foundation upon which the Baldur's Gate 3 house is built. Decisions progress the story. Decisions define your character and their relationship with other characters. Decisions determine where you go, why, and with who. Decisions are the reason so many play this game at least 2 to 3 times over. Quite honestly, decisions are also a large part of why it has taken me so long to finish this utterly insane game. I'm writing this part of the script after completing Shadow Heart's character arc, and might I just say, oh my god. You want to talk about decisions? That was one of the most heart-wrenching ones in the entire game in my opinion. And the way it left me feeling was incredible too. An odd mixture of confusion, regret, and weirdly satisfaction. I think I made the right choice for that playthrough, but I can't help thinking about what could have been, because I made the choice I know my character would have made, and not the one I actually wanted to make. And that's a big part of what I love about this game. The fact that so many choices are so critical and have such a real impact. BG3 constantly forced me to think about what I was doing, and then it made me live with the decision, at least psychologically. What I mean by that is that usually when I was faced with a tough choice in the game, I ended up quick saving to give myself a false sense of security and the confidence I needed to make a decision. Then I forced myself not to go back. In my mind, it just didn't feel right to pick the other choice just for the sake of seeing the outcome. I would need to start a new playthrough with a different character who would make a different choice to find out what could have been. If you want my advice, I think you should consider your first playthrough a trial run. Go into it with as little prior knowledge as possible and just experience the game. Make mistakes. I didn't even finish the game my first go round and had to accept a less than desirable ending because I made a ton of poor choices, and they basically all decided to come back and bite me in the ass at a point in the game where I really just needed anything to go right. Fortunately, I managed to learn from those mistakes, get over the hump, and have an absolute blast finally finishing the game. Part of the reason why this is one of the best aspects of BG3 is because of how difficult of a task it is to pull off when you think about it. D&D is a game of rule-based imagination, and the rules can get pretty broad and vague in some places, so the possibilities and combinations are astronomically large, especially if you get to space and interplanet travel. My point here is that Larian Studios had to account for so many choices and the possibilities each one unlocked. They had to make each one of these choices feel like they had an impact on the world and or characters, however small that impact may be. At the end of my first playthrough, when I chose the bad ending near the end of Act 2, all I wanted to do was start another playthrough and just do things differently. That, I believe, is a testament to well thought out and meticulous game development. Overall, there are so many different ways to approach BG3, each one making for a truly unique playthrough, and borderline endless fun and creativity. I myself have already spent over 170 hours in the game, and I think I've touched on maybe a third of what the game has to offer. Larian Studios truly is a game developer that understands that quality art takes time. Speaking of quality and taking time, let's talk about BG3's combat. I want to start this part of the video off with a comparison between turn-based and real-time combat in video games. BG3, since it's based on D&D 5e mechanics, is turn-based, with each round meant to simulate 6 seconds of real-time combat. On the other hand, I approach this game from a background as a self-proclaimed casual gamer with plenty of experience with AAA real-time combat games like Call of Duty, Mortal Kombat, For Honor, and a touch of Fortnite. It's also worth mentioning that my skill in these games ranges from terrible to below average. This is because I tend to get overwhelmed by the multitude of controls and strategies in such a fast-paced environment. These games rely on a person's quick reflexes and instincts, which I now realize wasn't the perfect marriage for me because I far prefer to rely on my meticulous mind and problem-solving skills. The reason I explain all this now is because I credit BG3 with helping me realize how much I love turn-based combat. Baldur's Gate's combat is less combat, I'd say, and more deliberate puzzles with sharp, heavy weapons and explosively destructive magic. My favorite part of BG3 combat is the walking in blind, dying over and over while learning my enemy's capabilities and tendencies, and gradually developing a plan to beat them, or evade them in some cases. That ultimately pays off and leaves me feeling pumped up until the cycle repeats. As a sports fan, I get about the same amount of adrenaline after beating a BG3 boss as I do after watching a linebacker absolutely body a wide receiver, reeling in a pass over the middle of the field, or after watching a closing pitcher strike out the side in a tight one-run game. Which brings me to my next point, just how incredible the actual combat is in BG3. Especially at higher levels, I found combat so rewarding because the enemies were wickedly powerful, but not unbeatable, and often as not took almost all the resources my party had to offer. Especially after the Ketheric and Gortash battles, Gale and Shadowheart were almost out of spell slots, my paladin had smited everything she possibly could, and Karlach was either down or dead and waiting to be revived by Shadowheart because the screw hit points, I'm gonna go down swinging approach just seemed to fit her. And remaining faithful to the D&D experience, everything worked out just fine because thank God that final fireball actually hit. Which brings me to the final topic for this section of the video, pure luck. All great plans are great plans as long as the dice roll favorably. If that doesn't happen, you're just SOL. For example, I recently participated in a one-shot where I was playing a rogue scout named Uldrix, who was supposed to be excellent at stealth and using a bow and arrow. Turns out that because of a bunch of god-awful dice rolls, he couldn't move around quietly or hit the broadside of a barn with an arrow. This, I believe, is the crucial element of both BG3 and D&D that makes them not just step-by-step puzzles, but a damn labyrinth with moving walls. In addition, opponents can be unpredictable at times. Sometimes an enemy wizard decides to use counterspell when it is least convenient for you, or an opponent uses some obscure ability you now need to work around. This may sound twisted to some people, but I find it immensely appealing to be in a situation where I could have a great strategy and it blows up in my face simply because luck isn't on my side. I think that reality, beyond any level of predetermined difficulty, makes it even more exhilarating when I finally succeed. I'll be honest, I don't know when I'm gonna start my next playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3, but I know for a fact that I want to do another playthrough just because of the sheer amount of content within the game I have yet to experience, which is a statement I will reiterate is completely absurd to be saying nearly 200 hours into the game. For right now though, I need to take a while to just, for lack of better vocabulary, think about my first full playthrough. Think about all the choices I made, all the enemies I fought and killed, and the lasting impact my party made on the city of Baldur's Gate. And that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching it through to completion. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please make sure to Fireball, Eldritch Blast, Divine Smite the like button for the YouTube algorithm. It helps channel growth immensely and I would really appreciate it. Have you played Baldur's Gate 3? If so, how many times? Are you also absolutely obsessed with this game? What do you think is the best aspect of Baldur's Gate 3? Leave all your thoughts in the form of the 3 C's, comments, constructive criticism, and conversation, in the Patronus section down below. As always, make sure to subscribe to this here Half-Blood YouTuber channel to help grow the community of sci-fi fantasy nerds I'm trying to build here, as well as ring that notification bell if you want to be notified when new videos are uploaded. But that's all I've got for y'all today, so stay extraordinary, you incredible sci-fi fantasy nerds. Peace.